My friends were hating on Uber because they would get into an Uber in the morning and couldn't get driving directions. There was no GPS or driving directions.
You did not add destination.
You didn't add destination. You just tell people where to go. And then, of course, they are not trained to really know the city. So what was interesting is them telling every morning I go to the same place and every morning I need to tell them where to go. And it's a very good feedback. But what was really interesting is we have two choices. We can either get drivers on the road or we can put GPS driving direction into the app. The problem is that if you add driving direction into the app, but you don't have the supply, it doesn't help you. It breaks.
Yeah.
And so
you make the customer experience better, which probably makes them
But
stick.
you don't have an experience to begin with.
Right.
Because you don't have drivers or you search 3 times the price, so nobody wants to use the product. So that's what I admire the most about Travis. He knew where to put his resources and the priorities in the right bucket, which is supply, before you solve for the customer experience. Because without the supply, you have nothing.
Welcome to the Early Podcast, where I interview the builders behind the world's most iconic companies. I'm Max Crowley. I was Uber's 25th employee and spent years scaling one of this generation's wildest rides. Each week, I sit down with the early innovators who really made it all happen. So please, tune in, like the show, subscribe, tell your friends, keep coming back. Let's go!
All right. Frederique Dame, good to see you.
Good to see you, Max.
Thanks for joining the podcast.
Thanks for having me.
This is so cool. We were at Google HQ filming this.
Yes, we are just right by the Google Venture office in New York City.
Yes, where you are a general partner.
Yes, based in San Francisco.
Based in San Francisco, but luckily we've got you here in New York and this amazing studio. All right, so we'll go back.
Yes.
Childhood.
Yes.
Where did you grow up? Obviously France, but where did you grow up?
I have an accent, for better or for worse. I was born and raised in Nice, 1 block from the beach, and spent my entire childhood there with one younger sister and 2 amazing parents.
What do you think was like a defining aspect of growing up in France?
Well, it was Nice, which everyone thinks is the best thing ever, but when you're from there, it's normal, pretty normal. Just a very urban city lifestyle. Parents, dentists, both of them, hardworking, and just like business as usual, like aunts and cousins and grandparents living a few blocks from each other. So pretty good life.
Yeah, I mean, you grew up in a place that people dream of visiting for vacation. It's pretty cool.
Yes.
When did you have the first indication that you wanted to go to the United States?
So this sounds very cheesy, but I watched this movie called Working Girl when I was about 10, 11-year-old. And I saw Melanie Griffiths in the role of Tess McGill, becoming this businesswoman out of nothing. And I wanted what she had. I wanted to be the hustler. I wanted to connect the dots, put the pieces together, work on a big deal, wear the suits. And so I went to my dad and I asked him, what does it take to be a businesswoman? And he's like, well, if you study engineering, you can pretty much do whatever you want. And so I set my mind to study engineering, not without the support of my dad, who was awesome. He was like, if you want to do it and you work hard at it, you can pretty much do everything you want in life. And decided to study engineering, moved to London after engineering school to do my master's degree and learn to speak English at the same time. I remember not being able to tell the pharmacist I had a sore throat.
Oh, man. And this is before Google Translate and everything else.
iPhone and everything. It was like pain throat with my little dictionary. And then after that, I went to work in the U.S.
So your early 20s,
Yes.
You moved to the United States.
Yes.
It couldn't have been easy.
It was not easy. I would say I was pretty much a hustler. Like my entire life, if you tell me a problem, I will find a way, both on the IQ and EQ level to make it happen and find a combination of what is technically possible, so to speak, and what is EQ possible. So when I wanted to move to the US and get my first job in the US, there was no LinkedIn, no Facebook. I'm going to age myself here. But there was no LinkedIn, no Facebook. no Skype, no FaceTime. We didn't even have a cell phone at the time. And well, you had flip phones, but that was pretty much it. And what was really interesting is that I really wanted to find a way. And I started to send resumes left and right with no traction whatsoever until I decided to get my alumni book and just email all the alumni from my network that were based in San Francisco. And they were generous enough to reply to me saying, if you really want to get a job here, you need to come and meet with people in person, which felt like a big deal. I had never been in the US in my entire life. My dad had never been to the US in his entire life. And here I am telling my dad, I really want to go to the US. Would you come with me? Because I'm terrified. And it's like, okay, let's book a ticket and let's go.
Amazing.
I remember barely understanding what it meant to do a 12-hour flight.
Have you even given yourself enough credit for how crazy that was?
I remember landing in San Francisco with my dad. We rent a car, go down El Camino Real, and then 101 south to
Mhm.
Palo Alto. And we are totally jet lagged, and I start freaking out. I literally start freaking out and telling myself, like, what the hell am I doing here? What's going on? And I think one of my strengths is to always talk to myself out of a freak out. And at that moment, I was literally freaking out. And I said, I cannot freak out to my dad right now. This wouldn't be fair. He did all of this work to come with me. I just need some sleep and I can sleep it off. And tomorrow we can figure things out. But that wouldn't be fair for me just upon landing to just freak out to my dad and tell him, what the hell are we doing? It would just be like, we're here for you.
Yeah.
I don't think he would have reacted badly, but I couldn't do that to him to just, I'm having second thoughts here because what are we doing? Yeah.
There's probably crazy thoughts going on in his head too.
Probably, yeah. You're right. I should probably ask him. But it was really interesting that there was this huge freeway. 101 is probably like 4 or 5 lanes, which is much bigger than anything you would see in France. And you just drive through it and try to find your motel. Yeah. And we had the best 10 days, I would say, like both sightseeing, interviewing, going to job fairs. It was an incredible father-daughter trip.
Well, I mean, your dad sounds awesome. I mean, what a cool thing to have happen. So from there, I mean, you get a job in San Francisco, Bay Area.
Mm-hmm.
The rest is kind of history. In a lot of ways, your first kind of big break was being a product manager at Yahoo.
Yeah.
What were you working on there?
So I joined Yahoo from enterprise software to jump into consumer software. This was the era of the emergence of social networking. So I was a big user of social networks, trying to figure them out, how it works, what features they should add. And so I really wanted to work for a company that was more consumer focused, where I could identify myself too, and almost project myself as a product manager working on products that I want to use every day versus working on wireless networks and
enterprise sales,
etc. So that was very refreshing to me. I learned a ton working on consumer product, working at Yahoo Local, which is basically business listing with rich content from user, like ratings and reviews, photos, collection of businesses. So it was like the equivalent of Yelp at the time, mixed with a social network like Facebook. So they were pretty much doing everything social at the time. Yeah.
And I mean, Yahoo and eBay are kind of the center of consumer at that
At the time, yeah. And then Google also emerging at the time. So this was the ecosystem, basically Google search, Yahoo as a destination, eBay as a marketplace for listings, yeah.
What did you learn from the company experience overall at Yahoo?
Learn to build product at scale. I think we were adding user-driven content to Yahoo Local listings. And you had to not only make sure that you get content around the listings, but you also had to moderate it. So you had to build tools to moderate the content because it was such a big company. You couldn't have any profanity. You couldn't have any bad pictures. So anything that was front-end related had to come with some backend to be able to moderate the millions pieces of content that would be submitted online every day, plus the liability of being a big company.
Yeah.
You couldn't afford to just launch a feature without actually building all the infrastructure around it. Yeah.
And so infrastructure becomes a theme through the next big part of your career.
Yes. Being an engineer by training, building tools at scale, backend infrastructure tools at scale, kind of was the theme. Yeah.
You've talked about kind of taking time between these experiences that were, very, very meaningful for you. And, I know before Uber, you took some time off. Obviously, it's a lovely thing to have, and not everybody's able to take that. But what did you kind of get the most out of that time off?
I didn't really take a time off. Like, I think in my dictionary of things, I'd never take time off.
Yeah.
But it was...
Which I can relate to, by the way. My time off is like barely
really
time off.
Yeah. Especially when you live in San Francisco, it's like there is always something to do.
For
and
sure.
My personality is not to do nothing.
Yes.
But I would say after 10 years working nonstop at tech companies, being on a visa, getting my green card, and pretty much having like a 2-week vacation a year to see my family in France, it was time to take a step back. And after chasing the next big jobs, the VP titles, working at the next unicorn, I think it was a bit of a time for me to refocus on what did I want to do in my next job. And I remember my sister, it was 2011. My sister was going to have a baby, my niece. I know you love your niece.
Yes, I can relate.
You can relate. I didn't want to see her just having a baby one day without seeing her pregnant. So went back to London, spent a week with her. We had a baby shower. So it was spending more time with family, enjoying the freedom of not being on a visa and having to chase my next job to still be legal in the US. And
When you joined Uber, you obviously had other options. What was sort of the process of getting in the mix at Uber? I know, Rob Hayes for First Round was involved. And then also, why'd you decide on Uber?
I look back and life is so fun in so many ways. I don't think I would have predicted what happened, like from starting with the intro to Uber, Rob Hayes introducing me to Uber. I would say during that break, I really thought very carefully about what I wanted in my next job. I knew I wanted to work with wonderful people I had chemistry with. I wanted to be happy in the now. I think like the Silicon Valley especially is all about chasing your next big break and working as a next unicorn. And I had done that playbook. I had chased a title. I had chased this company could be it and could be my next big break. I really thought very carefully about it. And I just wanted to work with incredible people on a mission that was very meaningful and be happy in the now. I think this was, I cannot control what the outcome is going to be. So I'd rather be happy now and enjoy working with people I enjoy spending time with especially as a product manager, you work a lot with engineers. And I always love jamming with engineers until midnight and working on cool product and, powering on features and iterating. And so to me, this was life. This was, I cannot do a 9 to 5 and go back home and do it all over again and not be happy. And so the goal was to find the right company that had the right people with a lot of mutual respect and a lot of fun, and then, go from there.
I mean, I know even in the interview process, it was interesting, right? I mean, you meet these guys, the engineers, and you meet Jordan, who's French, and you start to feel kind of the culture.
Really, really magical. I remember talking to Sophia, the recruiter, by phone. She's based in Seattle, I think, to this day. And I remember talking to her the first time the day Facebook acquired Instagram. And I had worked at photo sharing site. I'm like, damn it, I missed that, and you're talking to a recruiter, and Uber was the only company that was not looking for a head of product. They already had a head of product. So they were looking for the second they would have only had one second product person, hired one second product person. And I remember talking to her and had such a good connection with her that I'm like, okay, I'm going to keep my options open because it's not a VP product type of role, but this sounds intriguing. And I left the conversation energized. And I think when this happens, you need to pay attention. You really need to pay attention to the energy that you get from a conversation. And this stayed with me. And she said, we are not looking for a second product person right now, but as soon as we do, I'll make sure to call you. And she followed up every few weeks saying, not the right time, until it was the right time. And then it happened really fast. I met with Mina, head of product. I met with Curtis and the two first engineers. And they were so humble and friendly, like, Jordan is our first French engineer. You should meet him. And they brought him over. And I'm like, is he good French? Is he bad French? Like, I only deal with good French people.
And it turns out he's great French.
He's great French. And so, but there was this kind of banter about not taking ourselves seriously. And then they had a problem to solve in the next meeting. And they asked me what I thought about it based on my experience at Yahoo. I didn't know anything about marketplaces. So I asked them in turn, what does it mean? And so it was actually a really fun conversation. So much fun that Curtis went to grab Travis, and Travis had 10 minutes. He's like, okay, let's put you in front of Travis.
Amazing.
And I talked to Travis. We talked about our love for computer science. And then it really pitched me the role the way he would pitch the company to an investor, which I think is so important. When I look at a founder, I think your main job is to raise money and hire talents. And I would say Travis was exceptional at both. And he really pitched me the job as this is a problem we have right now. So the problem was we were surging all the time. We didn't have enough supply on the road. And all our driver information were in spreadsheets. So he said, I really want to build an infrastructure, backend infrastructure to store driver information and push a button to move the drivers from one step to another to get them on the road. And I want it to be like a video game. So you push the button and so driver ops in cities can just get people on the road. And that's how we ended up calling our team StarCraft. I don't know if you remember.
No, yeah, that's
StarCraft
great.
team.
Yeah, I mean, his vision on everything was just so crystal clear.
And it was exciting. I'm like, sign me up. I worked on backend infrastructure for Yahoo as part of, collecting social content for listing, for business listing. So to me, it was like, yeah, sign me up. That sounds about right.
When you think about sort of that infrastructure, what were some of the favorite tools that you built? Because supply became such a clear, important part of the business, right? I mean, everything is drivers, everything is those systems as tools, and everything was also enabling our driver operations managers to do the best job possible in the cities that they were operating in.
So first of all, I want to say when I joined Uber, I thought it was too late.
Mid-2012.
Yeah, I thought I had missed the boat, that this company was way too late to even get a chance at success, which is kind of crazy. I was employee 85. We were in 14 cities. Chicago was on fire with taxis.
Yes.
I think I had just raised a press release of taxis getting on the platform, and you're like, okay, the job is done here. There is nothing else to do. 14 cities. Like you would think that this is it, right?
No, for sure.
When I work with founders and I help them close candidates, I always try to paint the picture about this is how big it can get, even if it's already big. I think we always ask the question about the TAM, but it's also how do you get there and how do you expand your TAM? I think what was really interesting with Uber is, I remember there was this paper from this researcher saying like there is only that many taxis in the US or even in the world. So this is your TAM and it's never going to be bigger. And you realize that the market is not the taxi market, it's car ownership.
Yes.
And at this point, when you talk about car ownership, this is a much bigger TAM. And so I think you have to be mindful about what you define as your time, but also be a bit more creative about what it means for you to build a company that expand your time.
Yeah, I mean, mid 2012, we think 14 cities, it's growing, it's black car, we're getting into taxi. We haven't even started. Obviously, Travis had the vision, but we haven't even started UberX, which is the thing that propels the business until now still.
I remember we spent our time, I remember when we started with just adding new car type that were not UberX. You had Rosheim asking for Uber boats in Sydney. You had Pierre asking for Uber Moto in Paris. You had every flavor of everything except UberX at this point, which was pretty fascinating.
Ice cream trucks,
Uber puppies,
barbecue sandwiches.
Yes.
We're testing a bunch of things.
Yeah.
And little do we know that the biggest unlock is UberX, and it's coming.
There are two things I remember from Uber. One is, first of all, my friends were hating on Uber because they would get into an Uber in the morning and couldn't get driving directions. There was no GPS or driving directions.
You did not add destination.
You didn't add destination. You just tell people where to go. And then, of course, they are not trained to really know the city. And so what was interesting is them telling every morning I go to the same place, and every morning I need to tell them where to go. And it's a very good feedback. But what was really interesting is we have two choices. We can either get drivers on the road, or we can put GPS driving direction into the app. The problem is that if you add driving direction into the app, but you don't have the supply, it doesn't help.
It breaks.
It breaks. Yeah. And so
you make the customer experience better, which probably makes them
But you don't have an experience to begin with.
Right.
Because you don't have drivers, or you search 3 times the price, so nobody wants to use the product. So that's what I admire the most about Travis. He knew where to put his resources and the priorities in the right bucket, which is supply, before you solve for the customer experience. Because without the supply, you have nothing. And so that was my exercise to tell my friends, you have to respond, you have to repeat the driving direction every morning, but you have a car. You're in a car to get you to where you need to go. So if you step back and you put it in that context, it's easier to prioritize what you need to actually work on. The other thing that was very interesting is when we started to launch UberX, a lot of my friends said, this is the end of Uber. You're a luxury brand. You're a baller brand. You're going to completely undermine your brand by launching a product that is so cheap and not as prestigious as black car. One is that there was only that many Lincoln that you could hire and put on the platform. And I think they were also discontinuing the Lincoln business. I don't know.
It's wild because, I even posted an interview with Kevin Novak. And so in thinking about surge pricing, again, Travis had this very clear vision that he was executing against. And he never wavered from it, even when it was like in the face of things not going well, or maybe, disrupting the brand and getting into lower end cars. I remember when we launched Taxi in Chicago, and I thought this could be the end of Uber.
Yeah. And so your friends are like, this is a baller brand. I want to Uber in style. And what are you doing with UberX? This makes no sense.
Right.
But if we hadn't done that, we would be
no company.
Over.
No company at all.
And so sometimes you need to disrupt a little bit. Yeah, you need to disrupt yourself, expand, and not always listen to your customer.
You've described Travis as direct, but inspiring.
Yes.
What were those early days of working with him like?
The first thing I remember is him using a conference room as his office, and us going to the God View to see if he was on his way from the airport to come, or if we could use his office as a conference room. I think this was such a chaotic moment where everything was so busy.
Well, you needed the space to pace around in the conference room.
You remember you were not in San Francisco. There was this round.
No, but I definitely visited it. Yeah.
Fawcett Market.
Yes.
Yeah. Travis was such an inspiring leader. First of all, I think I remember one intern in a city in Asia saying, I cannot believe the CEO of Uber came to visit and ask me what I think about my city. I think Travis had the humility to ask a lot of questions. And that project, knowing everything about any city, because every city was so different. And so I think it was all about the jamming session with Travis. He would sit with you on the open floor, and just start asking questions about how you do things, why you're doing it, and let's solve a problem right there. And I think that was the really fun part of it, is jamming, figuring things out, coming up with sometimes a new product. And then there was a boom at the end. The boom.
Yes.
And then we would get it done. So a lot of jamming session, I think what I love the most is that it was not in our way. So busy with regulators in every city that you would see him pace late at night, talking to the GMs in the cities of the world. And what was really interesting is that when you would come to intervene, you knew you had messed up something.
You're calling him the big gun.
So Travis was not in your way unless there was something breaking or something he was not happy with. And I remember him calling us out and giving us some pretty harsh feedback about something we had done. And of course, it's not pleasant. It's like, you messed up, what's going on? And what I love the most is that instead of making you feel very small and very crappy about yourself, I remember him telling me, I know you can do it and I want you to do it. And I think it's going to be great, but I want you to do it and I know you can do it. And you leave that meeting feeling very disappointed in yourself because you wish you had done it in the first place. But I remember leaving that specific meeting with Charles thinking, I'm going to work twice as hard to fix it, because instead of telling me that I'm useless, he told me that he knew I could, he believed in me. And it's kind of very, this is a sign of such great leadership when someone gives you very hard feedback and makes you want to work twice.
And you're motivated.
Yeah. You're like, what just happened? Now I want to pull an all-nighter.
Yes.
Which was really, really fascinating. And you're like, what just happened to me? Really empowering way of leading the team and making people feel like they can actually solve the problem.
You've talked about sort of Uber's culture of playbooking everything and just building structure and building, an infrastructure that could scale. Where do you think that derived from? What do you think was the origin of just the ability to kind of scale so much globally so quickly?
I think what's really fascinating is that there was such a big culture of transparency and accountability and hustle. I think transparency, first of all, you remember that tools had all the dashboard possible and imaginable, that
every number, every city competing with each other,
every driver supply stats, every rider demand stats, every promos, incentive promos, time to get from bonus structure to commission, you name it. You have drop down, you could pull any city and see right away, color-coded what was happening in that city and why. And then we had the weekly all hands on Tuesday morning where every city was presenting their own dashboards.
Yep.
Lesson learned from all the pop-ups we had in Park City for Sundance and Austin for South by Southwest, and how many Twitter impressions we had, whether it was a success or a failure. That was pretty amazing to have this culture of transparency and vulnerability and be like, we tried that, it doesn't work. Every city was their own incubator. And I think this was very, very important. And then transparency drives accountability, because all of a sudden, if you don't meet your numbers or something is not working, you're going to be called out. And there was no finger pointing, I would say. It was just let's learn and move on. And I think when I work with companies right now, I realize sometimes how terrified people are to fail. Correct me if I'm wrong, but I don't think we had that culture
No.
of feeling bad if we try something and we were failing.
Yeah, there's no fear in that way.
There was no fear. No fear, no shame. Yeah, and I remember we were the product team for the entire driver supply, driver ops in every city possible. And I remember we didn't have enough resources to work on everything we could have worked on. And so a big thing was empowering cities to experiment themselves and use any tools they had available for the cheap through as many TaskRabbit as possible to the problem.
Whatever it takes.
Whatever it takes. You experiment, you try, you measure, you can share it with a few more cities, and if it works, then we can productize it. But there was this culture of let's problem solve the easy way before we actually productize it and throw engineering resources at it. And I think this is how Uber Eats started. Uber Eats was Uber Fresh at the time, and it was a car type. There was one sandwich type in a container in the app. You put it in a container. I think the last sandwich was being eaten by one of the team members for freshness purposes, as far as I recall. But yeah, Uber Fresh was a car type in the app, and you validate the concept, and when it started to take off, you're like, okay, we can productize it.
When you think about Uber's culture, I mean, obviously there's been a lot written, both the positive and the negative.
Yeah.
How do you sort of look back at that time, and what's the story that you tell people? I mean, you're someone who speaks publicly, and you have all these people that you've invested in. I mean, how do you talk about the culture in retrospect?
Culture. Well, I'm one of these people who drank the Kool-Aid.
Yes. Pouring the Kool-Aid on you.
Wearing the Uber tank tops.
Yeah, taking the
selfies, saying the boom every chance I could, posting, like you look at my Instagram during my time at Uber, and that's all Uber. It's all Uber. And people thought I would travel in every city we launched. I was just promoting the city we were launching, but I was not actually in the cities. But every chance I could, I would just promote Uber nonstop. I just think that we were all in the trenches together. And there was no job description. Yes, you had a job description, but we were all going above and beyond to make this work. Like, this was not about us. It was about the product and making the product work. So just giving you an example, I remember I met Mara in Boston telling me there is a local competitor launching a taxi, an Uber-like service in the city, and they were paying the drivers every day. And when you have a supply of drivers that you pay every week and one that is being paid every day, you know what's happening. They were about to lose their supply overnight. You have maybe 30 cars on the road, and next thing you know, you may lose your supply overnight. We were in probably 30 cities by then, and we had to pay drivers in every city every week. Systems were breaking every other week because starting Sunday night with Sydney, and then Paris, and then when Chicago was running, this was game over, because with the taxis and the volume that we had for Chicago, it was pretty much game over. And so we had to save that city. There was no too bad, figure it out. So we remember pulling the engineers, and I think we pulled 2 all-nighters to solve paying drivers every day for one city only, because we couldn't do it at scale.
Yeah.
Just to salvage a city. And then I remember the Singapore jobs pinging me saying, like, I have a problem for this, and you just chat the Curtis and say, can you look at this? And anyone who was available would just play team-ball and help each other. I remember even, was it Gideon in Scottsdale saying, oh, our notification emails for drivers suck. Can I make them HTML based? I know how to do it. Like, knock yourself out.
Right.
Like,
just go run with it.
Just run with it.
Yeah.
And I'm all for the emails to look more beautiful. And so I have so many examples of this type of examples where we were just helping each other.
Yeah. And people are iterating, and they're doing their thing, and it's endorsed and it's shared. We had driver ops meetings every week until we created this product ops function that was a liaison between product and operation, that was actually collecting feedback in a much more structured way, getting engineering to work on it, and then making sure that we would surface all the best practices and the new product back to ops. So we built that function internally to be able to scale and to propagate the knowledge for everyone the right way. Yeah. I mean, even workations are an example of the culture.
New Year's Eve is our Super Bowl.
Busiest day of the year.
So it starts with Halloween, when you start having a surge because people go crazy for Halloween.
Yeah.
Then it slows down with Thanksgiving, starts a little bit more with Christmas parties, goes down for Christmas, and then New Year's Eve is basically your Super Bowl. And you have to be all hands on deck for your Super Bowl. And what I found fascinating is that we could have been bummed to work over the holidays and be at the office and complain and say, oh, my boss is awful, I need to work over the holidays. And Travis, I don't know how you did that, but managed to make us feel like this was the most fun thing to do, was to work over the holidays. You pick a city, you work the entire holiday season, like from Christmas to New Year's Eve, in an Airbnb with your colleagues. You spend New Year's Eve on the system, making sure everything works fine. And the craziest part is the Airbnb was covered, but we would pay for our own tickets, our own food, and we were excited about it. Right?
Yeah.
Which vacation did you do?
Oh my God, I did a bunch. I mean, I did Costa Rica, the first one.
Yeah, I was not there yet.
Yeah, the systems went down, and then Miami the next year. Where were you that year?
I was in Melbourne. We launched over Melbourne with Austin, Logan. Oh my God, we were Ed, Rosheim, Oscar, Mike, Sarah, Austin, and Dana were recruiting. So we launched Uber Melbourne in a week.
Incredible.
And we were onboarding drivers, recruiting the team, preparing the launch party. It was crazy.
So cool, yeah. Because that year we did Miami, and we did a party there. We weren't live yet.
Were you in Miami? Oh yeah, that New Year's.
With that New Year's we did Miami, but we went
Stockholm as well.
Yeah, Stockholm,
Melbourne.
Did they do Singapore that year or no?
I don't.
It might have been the next year. Yeah, it was wild. It was also a bit of a hackathon too over time, where people were working on different projects and trying to build things. I mean, I remember the first workation I went on, I got Jordan to just code in some change to the user profile that was just a customer support issue that was just driving me crazy. I mean, it might have been something like people would add .con as their email address, and that was a very difficult customer support to get to answer because they couldn't write in, because we wouldn't be able to match up their email address with their account, because it was they were sending from .com and they couldn't figure out why. And it was just a thubbing that was happening. And it was I was like, can we just there's no .com, just don't let people add .con. And I remember all the engineers yelling because of my Chicago accent, being like .com, enough with the .com. It was that kind of stuff where you're just it would have taken me months to get someone to get this on some product roadmap at any other company. But with this, you could just be we're on a trip together. Hey, can you guys just fix this? So there's that collaboration. And in a world,
it's kind of these things where you don't go to a workation just for one night. Your New Year's Eve nights, it was fun to do a workation where you work on a project for an entire week.
You're building with people, you're building those relationships, everything.
Yeah, workation. I think the leadership it takes to make people travel on their own dime to a destination, work over Christmas and New Year's Eve nonstop, just to be present for New Year's Eve and cover your shift until 4 a.m. is pretty impressive. Can you imagine? The alternative would have been staying at the office, complaining about...
I was going to say, yeah. Or entitlement of you're not going to pay for my flight, or I have to share a bed with Ed Kasabian, which I had to do on many of those trips.
I had an ex-Uber pinging me just the other day, 2 weeks ago, saying hi. He was actually in Hawaii at the house of one of our workation. And he said, do you remember when I locked you out of the bedroom? I had this flash of, oh my God, this was the days. And so, I think it takes so much leadership to get an entire company to travel on their own dime to a destination just to do a hackathon and then be on the system over New Year's Eve, just monitoring everything and making sure nothing breaks.
Yeah, absolutely. And I think there's a bit of a meme online about a company needs to be a cult. I don't love that description, but at least directionally, I do agree. You really have to believe in what you're doing, right? You have to believe that you're making things better and believe in the leadership in that way.
The thing is that we were paying for our own flight tickets. We were paying for our own food on site. The only thing that was covered was the Airbnb locally. And we didn't have more stock options. There was no monetary stock incentive for you to go there. And yet everyone was participating. Granted, we're all young, no families and nothing, but I think it takes a pretty incredible leadership to move people that way, in my opinion.
What impact did you make, Uber?
Me?
Yes. What was your impact on the company?
I think the impact, first, the selfies. I think I took so many selfies. I have so many selfies with all of you guys. I think building the infrastructure for driver supply, I think StarCraft, getting drivers on board, paying drivers, communicating with drivers, background check of drivers. I think there are so many tools we could have spun off from Uber and actually make their own onboarding, background check, you name it, standalone product. I think I started the employee experience team 2 years later because we were having the same issues as with onboarding drivers, with onboarding employees.
Because the scale just started to
The scale was so crazy. I don't remember how many people we were onboarding every week from all over the world with different paperwork requirements, like office location, provisioning of laptop, you name it. Traveling to HQ for Uberversity, which was pretty much part of our culture. So I would say, like building a lot of tools that I think back, I'm like, we could have incubated so many companies. Like, it's pretty crazy.
And help the company scale.
We had to build it in-house. There was no checker at the time to do background check on drivers. We were literally building APIs with courthouses to get information from drivers to make sure they were legit. We could have built a checker at the time. But we built a lot of tools. We used a lot of tools. We integrated with a lot of tools, but we also built a lot of tools. Yeah, for sure. Yeah.
Ultimately, what were your couple of core learnings from the Uber experience?
I think being data-driven is big. Having dashboards, like I'm still amazed to see a lot of companies tell me they need a week to retrieve the data and figure out what to do with the data they will retrieve in a week. And I'm like, you don't have time. Like you need not only to have access to the data now, but you need your entire company to have access to this data. I think culture of experimentation. We were experimenting. Like I remember we had Uber Puppy in Seattle. And I had friends like, oh, I have a friend in Seattle who cannot get an Uber Puppy. Can you help? And I'm like, what are you talking about? What's this Uber Puppy? So you call Jen Joyce in Seattle, and she's like, yeah, we just tried this experiment, and everyone wants a puppy. Wants to order a puppy. I'm like, what are you?
The system went down. The engineers weren't aware that
we were not
going to be
it was
so crazy.
It was a contact. Talk about guerrilla marketing, hustling. We had no idea. Like people were like, let's try. And I think there's a culture of like experimenting, failing fast, no ego, collaboration. Remember chatting with people until midnight about projects. And I don't know, I wish for any company to, or any person to experience that. Like this is...
Agreed.
I feel like I lived it at Yahoo in a smaller scale with one of my team where we were a small team within the big Yahoo infrastructure. And I remember feeling like I felt very privileged to live that moment with this tight-knit group within Yahoo working on this specific project. And when it happened again at Uber, I'm like, oh my God, I'm living that magic again. And I remember telling my engineers, like, this is a one-in-a-lifetime experience. I had lived it, so I recognized it at a much bigger scale. And I think a lot of people didn't realize until it was over that this was pretty magical and that it may never repeat again in your life, in your career. Like, I wish for everyone to live it again. And maybe I became an investor so I can live it with 10 more companies. But I think when you find this product market fit and you hire the right people and you have such a crystal clear vision to rally everyone around and mission, this becomes pretty magical. And I wish for everyone to experience that in their lifetime.
So in 2018, you joined Google Ventures.
Yes.
How has been your transition from operator to the venture side of the house?
It's been great. Going back to Uber, I think I was a big champion of culture as well.
Yes,
I think
absolutely.
I would welcome everyone individually, ask how you pronounce their name, make them feel welcome, especially people in new cities. And during Uberversity, kind of get a sense of who people are, especially when we're working so cross-functionally with every city. And so I think when it comes to GV, I want to replicate the Uber magic, finding founders who have an incredible mission with an incredible vision and who have the ability to really hire the right people and build that magic with an incredible team of people and an incredible team of investors. And so to me, I'm hoping that all my companies will be the next Uber. That's the goal, but I think it comes first with picking the right entrepreneur who was a perfect founder market fit. I think as an investor, I really want to bet on entrepreneurs who have this mission, like they want to work on a big mission they are very passionate about. They have an incredible vision and they are ready to hire and work with incredible people and surround themselves with the right investors. I think that when all of this comes together, a lot of things can happen. I really try to find this founder market fit where an entrepreneur can really find their magic and their special power in their own way for their own companies. I think Travis was a master at marketplaces and figuring out what works from a supply and demand standpoint. You look at Zuckerberg and social, you look at Steve Jobs with Apple. I think everyone on their entrepreneur's journey have their own special skills, special superpowers. And I feel like as an investor, first, it's a privilege to work with people who have a mission they are ready to work for the next 1 or 2 decades. But also, I want to believe that I can be the catalyst of them finding their magic and their special power, because it's not about being the next Steve Jobs. It's about becoming the next you. And I think this is fun to collaborate, to be sometimes a therapist, a sounding board. And I think I see, and I think with my experience at Uber, knowing it's possible and knowing that it's not easy and that you need the right people around you, and then once you have that, you build a transparency, you build accountability. And it's been fascinating to see how some companies have all these ingredients and are ready to make the magic happen.
Well, I can't think of anyone who would be better from a catalyst of culture and positivity and energy. So I'm sure your entrepreneurs just love working with you.
It's been fun. A lot of people, I would say, doubt in me because I'm a product person at heart, and they say you're going to miss building products. I think I love mentoring people. I love helping them find their special power. I love brainstorming about what's possible and go from there. Yeah, it's been really fun. Yeah.
If you could give one piece of advice to your early 20s self that was coming to America and had never even been to the United States before and now has built this insane career, what would you tell that person?
I hate this question. I would say to trust yourself, fun, do exactly what you did because it worked out and I wouldn't do it any other way.
Hell yeah.
It's been really fun. Be yourself, trust yourself. I feel like I've so many times had so much anxiety about will it work out. And what I'm realizing is that it always works out as long as you have the courage to take the right steps, to stay in integrity with yourself. And I think part of why I think Uber works so well is because I was adamant about living my values and not joining a company or doing a job that was just about an end game versus living the experience of being happy every day. I think the moment I shifted to I'm going to enjoy every day and I'm going to be happy every day with the right people, I think this was my unlock. It was. And I think that's the same thing with GV. It's like I love working with the people every day, whether it's my partners, my founders. It's not easy every day, but at the same time, I wouldn't do it with any other people.
All right. So now for this last part, this is the early exit. This is the lightning round. So I'm just going to hit you with some questions. Just give me whatever comes to mind. You got to answer whatever I ask. All right. Average lights out time.
Oh God, this is not good. I blame it on Instagram, on the doom scrolling of death.
It's real.
Midnight. I need to start earlier bedtime, but yeah, it's pretty much.
Do you have an 8 sleep?
No, I have an Oura ring, which tells me I mess up every night, but yeah.
At 8, you swore you'd be.
Exactly where I am right now. I probably wouldn't think it was possible, but yeah.
Amazing. Perfect morning breakfast. What's on the plate?
Sticky bun. I like my sugar. I should switch to protein and eggs, and I do it every now and then, but I love a good croissant, pastry,
You're fresh.
sugar. The more sugar, the better.
First dollar you ever earned?
Telemarketing in college, calling people, asking questions, and making $1.
Making whatever the currency is.
Yeah.
Favorite book?
Oh, I read it recently. Can't Hurt Me from David Goggins.
Okay.
Yeah. Now I need to live by what he preaches.
By the,
Yeah.
Best advice you've ever received?
That one is from my dad. It's listen to people, but make your own opinion.
But
I think this is, you need to listen and you need to collect feedback, but at the end of the day, you're the one waking up and stepping into this life.
mentor who changed your trajectory?
So many of them. I think my dad. Still to this day, I'm going to get emotional. I think to this day, he's still like the biggest believer in me. And I think if he hadn't hopped on a plane with me, I don't think I would be where I am today. I think I remember him paying for the flight and me asking him to reimburse him. And he's like, no way. Like, what are you talking about?
That was a pretty incredible story about you guys coming over together.
I could say that I had so many mentors. I don't consider them as much as mentors as just guiding lights on my journey. You look at Rob Hayes introducing me to Uber. You look at my managers at Yahoo. I would ask a question. They're like, what do you think? What would you do? Why do you not think you have the answer? It's small things that make such a difference in your life that give you the confident boost. I volunteered at the Junior League for a long time, and I had this woman was like, you're so good at fundraising. You can get anything for that event and you can secure any goodies, and you need to be on the fundraising committee next year. And I realized I'm not afraid to ask. As long as it's for the right mission.
And you believe in it.
And I believe in it, I will go for it and secure the goods, and it works. And sometimes you don't see it in yourself, and you need other people to see it in you and share it with you.
Amazing. Well, thank you so much for doing this.
Thank you.
We did it. Great job. Thank you.